Welcome to today's Mishna Yomi. Today we have the great zchus to begin the fourth chapter of Taanis, Perek Revi, and we will be doing Mishnayos Aleph and Beis, the first two Mishnayos. Mishnah Aleph says as follows: Bishlosha prakim bashana nikohanim nosim es kapeim arba pamim bayom. There are 3 times. Now really what we're going to see is 3 different types of events where Kohanim will duchen a total of 4 times throughout the day. Kohanim will recite the Birchas Kohanim, the priestly blessing, 4 times throughout the day. What are the 4 times? Shachris in the morning, Musaf, Mincha, and Ni'ilas Sha'arim. Now, Ni'ilas Sha'arim means literally the closing of the gates. So what this means is that we will see at certain times throughout the year, you see, we are most knowledgeable regarding the Ne'ilah Tefillah of Yom Kippur. So remember again, that is the Tefillah we daven after Mincha on Yom Kippur, an additional supplicatory Tefillah right as the gates of the Beis HaMikdash or the gates of Shemaim, the gates of the heavens are closing. But as we're going to see, the Ne'ilah Tefillah was not only davened on Yom Kippur, but was also davened on during other events as well. Now what's unique about this is as follows. In general, Kohanim would not duchen by Mincha time. And the reason for that was very simple. Because a Kohen is not permitted to daven if he has consumed even a revius, even just 3.5 ounces of wine. So because it's possible that throughout the day the Kohen has consumed wine, we let the Kohen duchen in the morning, but normally not by Mincha time. But as we're going to see during these 3 particular types of events, we allow Kohanim to duchen not just by Shachris and Mosaf, but also by Mincha, and as well as by the Tfilas Ne'ilah. What are these 3 times throughout the year? Tanios, on fast days. So remember again, this talks about communal fast days. Ma'amados. Now Ma'amados we'll discuss a bit more in the next Mishnah. These were the gathering of Yisraelim in the towns in which they lived. We'll discuss in the next Mishnah, Yom Kippurim and Yom Kippur. So of course, again, as we're going to see, the common denominator amongst these 3 days is that they're fast days. So because they are fast days, there is no concern regarding the consumption of wine, and therefore we have no problem with the Kohanim going ahead and duchening even by Mincha time. So remember, out of the 3, Ta'anios, public fast days, are pretty obvious. That's what we've been spending the majority of our time in Taanis discussing. Yom Kippur is Yom Kippur. And of course, what we're going to have to focus on now are the Ma'amados, which leads us now to Mishnah Beis. Eluhein ha-Ma'amados. So what are these Ma'amados? Now, a Ma'amad literally is a gathering. What are these particular gatherings? Lefi shenemar, Tzavis b'nei Yisrael v'amar talem es karbani lochmi. So the Mishnah here quotes the pasuk regarding the carbon tamid. Remember again, each and every day in the Beis HaMikdash, there was a daily communal offering, a carbon tamid. There was a carbon tamid shel shachar, a morning daily offering, and an afternoon daily offering. These were offered daily. Now, interestingly enough, they are karbanos sibur, which means they are brought on behalf of all of Klal Yisrael, brought on behalf of the collective of the Jewish people. Here is the issue, says the Mishnah. The general halacha is that if a person is going to bring a karban, the owner must be present at the time that the offering is offered. See, here is the problem. The problem is if the karban tamid is indeed a communal sacrifice, doesn't that require representation of Klal Yisrael, of the Jewish people, at the time that the karban is offered? So how do you pull that off? To which the Gemara search, the Mishnah says, Hiskinu hanavim arishon 24 mishmaros. So remember again, interestingly enough, the early prophets divided, and the Gemara points out that this is a reference to Shmuel Hanavi and David HaMelech. They split Klal Yisrael up, or we should say they created 24 watches, 24 groups, 24 cohorts. Now, as part of each of that cohort, I'll call Mishmar Mishmar Haya Ma'amad B'Yerushalayim Shal Kohanim Shal Levim V'Shal Yisraelim. So remember, we're used to hearing about these 24 groups, these 24 cohorts, when it comes to the Kohanim, right? Kohanim were split up into 24 groups. Each group would serve 1 week in the Beis HaMikdash. Now, each group was made up of multiple Kohanic families. So you would have a group assigned to a particular week in the Beis HaMikdash, and that week was divided up amongst individual Kohanic families. What the Mishnah introduces us to is that for each one of those Kohanic cohorts, for each one of those Kohanic groups, there was also a corresponding group of Leviim and a corresponding group of Yisraelim. So what turns out is that there were 24 cohorts made up of Kohanim, Leviim, and Yisraelim. They're to really represent the spectrum of the Jewish people. Higia Zman HaMishmar Lalos, when it was time for a particular group or cohort, it was their week in the Beis Hamikdash. So Kohanim uLeviim omim Yerushalayim. So the Kohanim and the Leviim, they would go up to Yerushalayim. The Yisrael sheba'oso mishmar, and the Yisraelim who were part of that cohort, they didn't have to go up to Yerushalayim. Now it's actually interesting. There were some Yisraelim from that cohort who ascended to Jerusalem with the Kohanim and the Leviim, but not the whole cohort. Because obviously, again, you have many more Yisraelim than Kohanim and the Leviim. So you don't need all the Yisraelim to go up. Some representation of Yisraelim went up with their cohort, but what did the remaining Yisraelim do? Yisraelim sheba'osa mishmar miskansin la'areim. They would gather in their respective towns, v'korin b'ma'aseh bereshis, and they would ultimately go ahead and read the Genesis narrative. And in fact, the Gemara discusses how they would split up Parshas Bereshis. Now, what's the connection over here between reading Parshas Bereshis and the Karban HaTamid? Because the idea is to show that just like the Genesis narrative is a story of creation, sacrificial service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu was necessary for the continuity of the existence of the world as well. So really an incredible picture. You have 24 groups, 24 cohorts of Kohanim, Leviim, and Yisraelim. That each cohort would go up to the Beis Hamikdash for 1 week, but for the Israel group, they didn't all ascend. Some of them ascended with the Kohanim and the Leviim, and others remained behind. Those who remained behind would gather in their respective towns, and they would devote themselves to spiritual service that week. What would they devote themselves to? So here the Mishnah says that they would read the Genesis narrative. Now we'll stop over here for today, but in Emeretz Hashem in tomorrow's Mishnah Yomi, we will see exactly a greater breakdown, a more detailed breakdown, exactly how they spent their days during these ma'amados. So it turns out that the word ma'amad means a gathering, but specifically it refers to the gathering of the Yisrael cohort in their respective towns during the 1 week in which they were on call for temple service. Some Yisraelim would ascend, and some Yisraelim would just gather locally. Again, what they did during that week, Emeretz Hashem, we will see in tomorrow's Mishnah. Wishing everyone a wonderful day.